My ex left me for my slim best friend because he said I had stopped taking care of myself. On the morning of their wedding, his mother called and said, "Claire, get to Hawthorne Ridge. You need to see this." The phone rang at 9:46 a.m., and I almost let it go to voicemail. I was barefoot in my kitchen, wearing an oversized Duke sweatshirt, and waiting for cinnamon pancakes. My plan was simple: keep my phone face down, watch terrible television, and pretend Ethan Coldwell was not marrying Brooke Mercer, the woman who had been my closest friend for 11 years and his secret girlfriend for 4 months. The Charlotte area code made my stomach tighten. "Claire?" The voice was unmistakable. "Come to Hawthorne Ridge Country Club immediately. Don't change, don't call anyone, just come." What happened? Margaret Caldwell inhaled sharply. "You do not want to miss this." The line went dead. Every sensible part of me said to stay home. Whatever disaster was unfolding belonged to Ethan. 6 months earlier, he had ended our 3-year relationship with the calm efficiency of someone canceling a subscription. Brooke had listened to me cry afterward while pretending she knew nothing. I should have returned to my pancakes. Instead, I grabbed my keys. To understand why, you need to know who Ethan had been when I met him. I was 28, working as a risk analyst. Ethan was a commercial attorney at a firm where junior associates wore jackets even in July. We met at a friend's engagement dinner after he ordered a wine that did not exist. I corrected him. He laughed, and I remember thinking his laugh sounded safe. He was tall, composed, and quietly clever. His family had old North Carolina money. His late father had been a federal magistrate. Ethan drove a silver Range Rover, collected vintage watches, and treated foreign films as though subtitles were a moral achievement. We dated for 3 years. I loved him in the gradual way that makes compromise feel like devotion. His routines became mine. His preferences became the default. I stopped suggesting restaurants he disliked, stopped arguing when he interrupted me, and stopped wearing bright colors because he once said they made me look loud. I did not notice myself shrinking. Brooke had been my best friend since our first semester at Queen's University. She was effortlessly photographic and worked as a creative director. She had attended my father's funeral, held my hand through a health scare, and knew every insecurity I whispered after midnight. She and Ethan got along immediately. I thought that was a gift. The first warning came 8 months before the breakup. Brooke canceled a friend's birthday dinner because of a migraine. Ethan, who had promised to arrive after work, never appeared. When I texted him, he said he had gone home early to prepare for a Monday hearing. I told him Brooke had canceled too. "That's unfortunate," he replied. The words were ordinary. The pause before them was not. I noticed it and chose not to examine it. That was the first time I told myself it was nothing. The second warning arrived as a scent. One Thursday evening, I let myself into Ethan's townhouse. I was there often enough that half my clothes were in his closet. The living room smelled faintly of white tea and cedar. Brooke's perfume. She had worn it since college. For 2 seconds, I stood with my hand on the door. Then I supplied explanations. Maybe she had dropped something off. Maybe they had met before going downtown. Adults were allowed to know each other without betrayal hiding beneath every detail. I considered asking Ethan. I decided not to. I told myself I did not want to become suspicious. The truth was simpler. I feared that a direct question would demand a direct answer, and some part of me already knew I would not like it. That night, he kissed my forehead without looking at me. His body was beside mine, but his attention felt miles away. It was nothing, I decided. The next warning came 6 weeks later during an argument about our future. I asked when we were going to stop living between dating and building a life. I was not demanding a ring. I wanted a plan. Usually, Ethan answered with patient reassurance. "I'm not leaving, Claire. Why force a timeline?" That night, his voice changed. "I think we may have some basic incompatibilities." The word sounded borrowed from a legal document. What incompatibilities? Lifestyle, priorities, attraction. Be specific. I'm still trying to understand it myself. He said we both needed space. I drove home inventing reasons why one hard conversation did not erase 3 years. The next morning, I called Brooke. "Ethan and I had a strange fight. I think he might leave me." "Oh, Claire, tell me everything."
She said he was overwhelmed. Some men panicked when relationships became serious. I should not pressure him. Her voice was warm and familiar. She already knew exactly what he wanted. She was part of the reason he wanted it. By then, Ethan had developed a new kind of silence. I knew the ordinary versions: tired, irritated, distracted. This was different. It felt settled, like he had already made a decision and was waiting to announce it. I blamed myself for noticing. I called it anxiety, neediness, fear. Then, on a rainy Tuesday in April, my client call ended 40 minutes early. I reached Ethan's townhouse at 6:38 p.m., sooner than I had told him. My key still worked. I placed my laptop bag by the door and heard laughter upstairs. The television was playing in the bedroom. I remember feeling relieved. At least he was finally relaxing. I climbed the stairs and pushed open the bedroom door. Brooke was beneath my green knitted blanket. Ethan's arm was around her waist. They were lying against the pillows, laughing at something on the screen as though they had done it 100 times. Brooke saw me first. She did not scream. She simply stopped smiling. Then Ethan turned his head. The television kept playing while my mind tried to turn the scene into something else and failed. I heard myself say, very calmly, "I understand." Then I picked up my bag and walked out.
Ethan called 14 times before midnight. I answered the 15th. His explanation sounded polished, almost rehearsed. The affair had lasted 4 months. He had meant to tell me, but there had never been a good time. He still cared about me. He did not want to hurt me. Then he said this sentence that stayed with me longer than the betrayal itself. Broken eyes simply fit better. What does that mean? He hesitated. She takes care of herself. She enjoys the same things I do. With you, everything started feeling heavy. I looked down at myself as though he could see me through the phone. I had gained weight during the previous year. My father had died, work had become relentless, and sleep came in scattered pieces. Ethan knew all of that. Still, he reduced 3 years to a comparison between my body and Brooke's. You mean she's thinner? I'm not trying to be cruel, but that's what you mean. He sighed, irritated now that I had forced his carefully arranged language into something honest. I just think she matches the life I want. There was that word again, matches, as though people were furniture selected for the same room. I ended the call. Brooke sent one message later that night. "I'm sorry you discovered it like that. Not sorry for betraying me. Sorry I had walked in before they were ready to control the story." Within weeks, they began posting photographs together. 3 months later, Ethan proposed during a weekend in Charleston. Mutual friends sent me screenshots as if evidence of my humiliation were a public service. I muted everyone. For several weeks, I moved through life mechanically. Work, home, microwave dinner, sleep when possible, repeat. Then one night, I sat on my kitchen floor and finally admitted something I had avoided for years. Ethan had not made me disappear by himself. I had helped him. I had swallowed opinions to prevent arguments. I had accepted jokes that hurt because objecting would make me sensitive. I had treated my needs like inconvenient requests that required approval. By the time he left, there was barely enough of me remaining to defend. At 5:30 the next morning, I walked into a neighborhood gym. Not because I wanted Ethan to regret leaving, not because I wanted to become thinner than Brooke. I went because grief had settled into my body, and I needed somewhere physical to confront it. I lasted 9 minutes on the treadmill. My lungs burned. My legs shook. I locked myself in a bathroom stall and cried into a handful of paper towels. Then I washed my face and returned for another 5 minutes. 2 days later, I came back. That was how the next 6 months began. My trainer was Marcus Hale, a former college sprinter with 15 years of coaching experience and no interest in dramatic explanations. He studied my intake form, asked about old injuries, and built a program around strength, mobility, and endurance. "We're not punishing your body," he told me during our first session. "We're teaching it to trust you again." The first month was brutal. I woke before sunrise 3 times a week. My muscles hurt constantly. Some evenings, I fell asleep before 9 with dinner still cooling beside me. But I kept returning. By the second month, I could run 2 miles without stopping. By the third, Marcus introduced me to a nutritionist named Dr. Lena Ortiz, who taught me how to eat for energy instead of treating food as something I had to earn. Nothing about the process was glamorous. It was repetitive, quiet work. And for the first time in years, the person I was building my life around was me. During the 4th month, I began sleeping through the night again.
I stopped waking at 3 a.m. with old conversations replaying in my head. My shoulders no longer curled forward when I entered a room. At work, I spoke without adding apologies to every sentence. I also started therapy. Dr. Naomi Chen had spent 12 years working with people recovering from controlling relationships and chronic self-neglect. She had a calm way of asking questions that seemed harmless until they followed me home. The hardest one was simple. When did you begin believing that love required you to become easier to manage? I could not answer during that session, or the next one. Eventually, I realized the pattern had existed long before Ethan. He had not created the part of me that feared rejection whenever I expressed a need. He had simply benefited from it. Understanding that did not erase the betrayal, but it changed what I believed I had lost. By the 5th month, I had lost 19 pounds. The number mattered less than everything the scale could not measure. Stronger legs, steadier breathing, better sleep, and the way I no longer looked down when strangers met my eyes. A coworker passed me outside the gym one morning and walked several steps before turning around. "Claire?" I laughed. Her surprise did not make me feel victorious. It simply confirmed that the changes I felt internally had become visible. By month 6, Ethan and Brooke's wedding invitations had already gone out. I knew because one arrived at my old address and was forwarded to me by mistake. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 o'clock on a Saturday in October at Hawthorne Ridge Country Club, 40 minutes outside Charlotte. The venue sat above a lake and was known for white stone terraces, enormous oak trees, and weddings where wealth appeared in details nobody discussed aloud. There would be more than 100 guests. Margaret Caldwell had reportedly spent nearly $50,000 on the event. I threw the invitation away. On the wedding morning, my plan was absolute. Breakfast delivery, old crime shows, curtains closed, phone on silent. At 9:46 a.m., Margaret called. At 9:54, I was pulling on jeans. At 10:02, I was driving toward Hawthorne Ridge with damp hair, no makeup, and no idea why I had listened. The closer I got, the more ridiculous the decision felt. I imagined arriving to discover some minor emergency, a missing document, a drunken relative, a request to retrieve something Ethan had left at my apartment months ago. Then I turned into the country club entrance. The parking area looked like the aftermath of an evacuation. Guests in formal clothes stood in tight groups beneath trees. A woman in a rose-colored dress was crying beside a black SUV. 2 groomsmen paced near the entrance while arguing into separate phones. Nobody looked celebratory. Inside, a chair had been knocked onto its side. Water spread across the marble floor from a shattered vase. White roses and eucalyptus lay crushed beneath passing shoes.
The wedding coordinator stood beside the reception hall with a tablet pressed against her chest. Her face had the frozen expression of someone trying to prevent a catastrophe from becoming public. Margaret found me near the staircase. She was wearing pearls and a navy silk dress, but her hands were shaking. "Claire," she said, gripping my wrists. "Brooke is gone." I stared at her. "What do you mean, gone?" "She's been seeing another man." The noise of the lobby seemed to disappear. "There are messages," Margaret continued. "Hundreds of them. One of the bridesmaids found out this morning and showed Ethan before the photographs." She lowered her voice. "Brooke called him a temporary arrangement. She said she wanted the wedding, the house, and the Caldwell name, but not him." For one terrible second, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because 6 months earlier, Ethan had stood in the wreckage of our relationship and explained that Brooke matched the life he wanted. Apparently, he had never asked whether he matched hers. Margaret pulled me toward a quiet corridor away from the guests. "She left through the garden entrance," she said, still wearing the dress. "What happened when Ethan confronted her?" She told him he was predictable. She said she had never planned to stay married for long. Margaret's mouth tightened around each word. "The man is named Ryan Cole. He owns 2 nightclubs in Raleigh. Apparently this has been going on since before the engagement." I looked through the glass doors toward the lawn. Staff members were dismantling part of the ceremony setup while guests pretended not to watch. "Where is Ethan?" "In my husband's old office. He won't speak to anyone." "I'm sorry," I said. And I was. No matter what he had done to me, I understood the shock of discovering that a person beside you had been living a second life. Margaret studied my face.
Then her eyes moved over me slowly, from my running shoes to my hair, which I had tied back before leaving the apartment. "You look extraordinary," she said. I felt something inside me become alert. "Thank you. You've changed so much. I've been taking care of myself." The words came out colder than I intended. Margaret looked away. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Somewhere nearby, glassware clinked as staff cleared tables that might no longer be used. Then she said, "The officiant is still here." I stared at her. "The flowers are paid for. The guests have arrived. Everything is ready." I already knew where the conversation was going, but my mind refused to accept it. "Margaret, you and Ethan were together for 3 years. You understood him. You were loyal to him. Please stop. He made a terrible mistake. He made a decision. He was confused. He compared me to Brooke and decided I was not good enough for his life." Margaret stepped closer. "He sees that now." "Has he said that?" She hesitated. "He doesn't need to." I laughed once, quietly, because the alternative was anger. "You called me here because you want me to marry him?" "It would not need to be elaborate," she said quickly. "A private ceremony, just family and close friends. We could explain the rest later." "You want me to replace Brooke at her own wedding?" "I want to prevent my son from destroying his life over one humiliating day." I looked past her at the overturned chair, the scattered flowers, and the guests whispering behind champagne glasses. 6 months earlier, Ethan had destroyed my life, or what I had mistaken for my life, and nobody had rushed to replace what he took from me. Nobody had called him confused. Nobody had suggested that my humiliation required an emergency solution. Margaret reached for my hand. "Claire, you always loved him." "I did. You could still have everything you wanted." "No, I could have what I wanted before I understood the price." Her expression hardened. "Do not let pride make this decision for you." "This is not pride." "Then what is it?" "Self-respect." The word landed between us with surprising weight. I continued before she could interrupt. "Ethan told me I had stopped taking care of myself. He said Brooke suited him better because she was thinner, more polished, and easier to imagine beside him." Margaret's eyes dropped. "I spent 6 months rebuilding my life, not so I could become acceptable to him again, not so I could wait until his first choice walked away. He did love you. Maybe he did. But he loved me in a way that required me to feel grateful for being tolerated." She flinched. I looked toward the closed office door at the end of the hall. "I hope Ethan recovers from this, truly." "Then stay." "I can't." "Why?" "Because I will not become the emergency replacement for the woman he replaced me with." Margaret's face changed then. The desperation disappeared, leaving only exhaustion. I gently removed my hand from hers. "Today is not his second chance with me," I said. "It is the consequence of his first choice." Then I turned toward the exit. I walked through the lobby without looking back. Outside, the October air was sharp and bright. Guests turned as I crossed the terrace, their expressions openly curious now. Some of them recognized me. Others had already heard enough fragments to understand why I was there. I kept walking. I wish I could say I left feeling powerful. The truth was less cinematic. My hands shook so badly that I dropped my keys beside the car. Once I finally started the engine, I sat behind the wheel for several minutes without moving. What had just happened? Ethan's mother had summoned me to his ruined wedding and asked me to step into the empty place beside him, as though the past 6 months could be erased by changing the bride's name on a program. I drove out of the country club gates. Halfway home, I pulled into a pharmacy parking lot because my breathing had become too fast. I lowered the window and pressed both palms against the steering wheel. Then, unexpectedly, I began to laugh. It was not happiness. It was the strange, breathless sound the body makes when an experience is too absurd to process normally. 6 months earlier, Ethan had chosen Brooke because she matched his future. Now, Brooke had abandoned him before the ceremony.
and his mother believed the solution was to retrieve the woman he had discarded. By the time I reached my apartment, the shaking had stopped. I changed into sweatpants, made black tea, and curled into the corner of my couch. For the first time that day, I allowed myself to imagine Ethan inside that office. I pictured him in his wedding suit, staring at messages between Brooke and another man. I imagined him learning that she had called him dull, useful, and temporary. I understood exactly how betrayal rearranged reality. Part of me felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the bedroom upstairs in his townhouse. Brooke beneath my blanket, Ethan's arm around her waist. The way both of them had watched me leave without chasing me until they had time to organize an explanation. Compassion did not require rescue. At 3:18 p.m., a message arrived from an unfamiliar number. "This is Vanessa, one of Brooke's bridesmaids. Everything has been canceled. Margaret told people you came here and refused Ethan. Some guests are saying you showed up to humiliate him. I thought you deserved to know." I placed the phone face down. At 4:07, my friend Maya called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message lasted nearly 4 minutes. Brooke had apparently driven to Raleigh and posted a photograph of a cocktail with the caption, "Some endings are freedom." At 5:30, my older brother called from Richmond. He had already heard the story through her mother, who had heard it from someone whose cousin attended the wedding. I told him everything. When I finished, he was silent for a moment. "Are you okay?" "Yes." "Really okay, or the version where you say you are so nobody worries?" I considered the question. "Really okay," I said. And I realized it was true. At 7:51 p.m., someone knocked on my front door. 3 slow, heavy knocks. I knew who it was before I stood up.
There was no version of that day in which Ethan did not eventually come to me. When his carefully arranged life collapsed, he would instinctively return to the person who had always helped him put things back together. I set my tea on the table. For a moment, I considered pretending I was not home. Then I walked to the door and opened it. Ethan stood beneath the porch light, wearing the same white shirt he had planned to marry Brooke in. His jacket and tie were gone. The top buttons were undone. His hair was disordered and his eyes were red. He looked older than he had that morning. His mouth opened as if he had prepared a speech. Then he saw me. Not glanced at me, saw me. His eyes moved slowly over my face, my shoulders, the shape of me standing straight in the doorway. The words he had rehearsed disappeared. "Claire," he whispered. "Ethan." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. He looked like a man who had traveled towards something certain and discovered that it no longer existed.
"I heard what you told my mother," Ethan said. His voice was rough, but still controlled. Even devastated, he was trying to arrange the conversation into something manageable. "She should not have called you. I know. I didn't ask her to. I know that too." He looked past me into the apartment, perhaps expecting an invitation. I did not move. "You look different," he said. There was no admiration in the words at first, only surprise, the stunned recalculation of someone trying to place a familiar person inside an unfamiliar shape. "I am different. I can see that." He rubbed one hand across his face. For 3 years, Ethan had always known what to say. In meetings, arguments, family dinners, he could turn language into structure, could make even selfish decisions sound reasonable. Now every sentence seemed to collapse before he finished it. "How are you?" "I'm good." He stared at me. "No, I mean, after everything. Today. Brooke. I understand what you mean. And I'm still good." His jaw tightened slightly, as if my answer had violated some expectation. "I don't know why I came here." I did. He had come because I had once been the person who translated his emotions for him. I had calmed him before difficult hearings, sat beside him after his father's death, and reassured him whenever certainty failed. For years, I had made myself available whenever his life became uncomfortable. He had assumed that version of me would still be waiting. "I think you do know," I said. He lowered his eyes. "I made a mistake." The sentence hung between us. "Which one?" He looked up quickly. "Claire. Leaving me? Choosing Brooke? Or believing I would still be here when she left you?" His expression tightened. "I didn't come to be attacked. I'm not attacking you. You know what I mean." "Yes," I said. "You came because you wanted comfort, without having to explain why you deserve it." He stepped back as though I had pushed him. "I know I hurt you. You knew that 6 months ago." "I didn't understand how badly." "You understood. You simply believed it was worth it." He opened his mouth and then closed it. The neighborhood was quiet around us. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked once. A sprinkler clicked rhythmically across a lawn. Ethan looked toward the street. "She said I was temporary," he whispered. The pain in his voice was real. I felt it. That was the difficult part. I had loved him for years. My compassion had not vanished just because I had finally learned how to protect it. "I'm sorry," I said. He looked at me with sudden hope. "But I cannot be the person who helps you survive this." The hope disappeared. "I'm not asking you to fix it." "Then what are you asking?" He hesitated too long. "I don't know." "Yes, you do." His eyes moved over me again. "I keep thinking about what my mother said, that we should get married." "No. About you. About us." "There is no us." "There was. There was also a day when you told me I did not fit the life you wanted." "I was wrong." "Maybe." "I know I was." I folded my arms. "You did not decide that after reflection, Ethan. You decided it after Brooke embarrassed you. That isn't fair." "It is exactly fair." He took a slow breath. "I saw you today and I realized, no." He stopped.
You do not get to look at me now and rewrite why you left. You did not suddenly discover my value. You discovered that Brooke did not value yours. His face went still. The words hurt him. I could see that. But truth was not cruelty simply because it arrived too late to feel gentle. "I loved you," he said. "I know. Part of me still does. I know that too. Doesn't that mean anything? It means what we had was real. It does not mean I have to return to it." For the first time, Ethan looked completely lost. 6 months earlier, that expression would have broken me. Now it only made me sad. "I hope you heal from this," I said, "but it will not happen here. Claire, please." "Good night, Ethan." I closed the door carefully. I stood with my hand on the handle and listened to him remain on the porch for several seconds. Then came his footsteps, the car door, the engine, the sound fading down the street. I returned to the couch, picked up my cold tea, and turned the television back on. For the rest of the night, I did not think about him.
3 months later, I ran my first 5K. It was a small charity race along the Catawba River, held on a cold Saturday morning in January. Nothing dramatic, no cheering crowd waiting specifically for me, just a temporary starting line, paper cups of water, and several hundred people wearing numbered bibs. Marcus stood near the finish with a coffee in one hand. My brother had driven down from Richmond the night before and complained loudly about waking before sunrise, though he was the first person I heard shouting my name during the final stretch. I finished in 32 minutes and 8 seconds. It was not an exceptional time, but 9 months earlier, I had lasted 9 minutes on a treadmill before hiding in a bathroom stall because I could not breathe through the grief. When I crossed the line, my legs felt unsteady and my lungs burned, but I did not stop moving. Someone placed a medal around my neck. Marcus looked at his watch and nodded. "You had more left," he said. "That is your version of congratulations? It is my version of telling you we start training for 10 kilometers on Monday." My brother handed me a water bottle. "You know, normal people celebrate before creating a more difficult problem." Marcus smiled. "That is why normal people hire me."
We went to breakfast afterward, and I ordered whatever I wanted without mentally calculating whether I had earned it. That mattered. For years, food had been attached to judgment. Ethan had never directly forbidden me from eating anything, but he had a way of looking at my plate that made every choice feel observed. Now I ate because I was hungry. My brother took a photograph of me holding the medal. My hair was tied badly, my face was red from the cold, and I was smiling without checking how I looked first. I posted it online. Within an hour, Marcus commented, "Look what consistency built." Maya came over that evening with wine and takeout. We sat on my balcony beneath 2 blankets and talked until nearly midnight. For the first time, I told her the complete story of the wedding day, Margaret's proposal, Ethan at my door, the way he had looked at me as if change itself were a personal betrayal. Maya listened without interrupting. When I finished, she tilted her head. "Do you know what is strange?" "What?" "You finally seem like yourself again." I looked through the balcony railing at the lights from the apartments across the street. I think I am starting to feel like myself. News about Brooke and Ethan still reached me occasionally through mutual friends. Brooke and Ryan lasted less than 2 months. She moved to Miami after accepting a position with a luxury hospitality company. Someone said she had deleted every wedding photograph before the venue finished removing the decorations. Ethan accepted a job with a firm in Washington, D.C. Margaret spent several weeks calling guests personally, explaining that the wedding had been canceled because of a private family matter. She spoke so politely that everyone understood the subject was closed. I did not search for more information. When people tried to offer updates, I changed the subject. The flowers from the canceled ceremony were donated to a nearby hospice center. A volunteer later wrote a short article for a community newsletter about how dozens of white roses had arrived unexpectedly on a difficult weekend. The article was titled, "Flowers Without a Wedding." Maya sent me a photograph of it. I printed the page and placed it on my refrigerator, not because it reminded me of Ethan. I liked the idea that something arranged for one purpose could end up somewhere entirely different and still become meaningful. Maybe lives worked that way too. For months, I'd believed the future I planned with Ethan had been wasted. Every compromise, every shared routine, every imagined house and holiday had seemed like evidence of time I could never recover. Now I understood that losing one future had not left me without one. It had only forced me to stop building toward a life that required my absence. In February, I received an email from Ethan. The subject line contained only my name. I stared at it for several minutes before opening it. He wrote that therapy had helped him understand the damage he caused. He apologized without mentioning Brooke, his canceled wedding, or how I looked when he came to my door. For the first time, the apology seemed to be about what he had done rather than what had happened to him. I read it twice. Then I closed the message without replying.
For several days, I wondered whether silence was cruel. Ethan's email was thoughtful. He admitted that he had treated my loyalty as something permanent and therefore disposable. He wrote that he had confused admiration with love, appearance with compatibility, and certainty with maturity. He did not ask me to forgive him. He did not ask for another chance. That made the message harder to dismiss. Dr. Chen asked what I felt when I read it. Relief, I said, and anger. Why relief? Because he finally understands. And why anger? Because understanding now does not change what happened then. She nodded. Both can be true. I had spent months believing closure would arrive as one perfect moment. Ethan apologizing, Brooke regretting everything, or me becoming so successful that the betrayal no longer mattered. Instead, closure came in smaller pieces. It was waking without checking my phone. It was passing Ethan's favorite restaurant and realizing I had not thought of him. It was reading his apology and understanding that I did not need to reward growth that happened after I was gone. A week later, I replied, "Thank you for taking responsibility. I believe you are sincere, and I hope you continue doing the work. I forgive you, but I do not want to reopen contact. I wish you well." I read the message 3 times before sending it. His response arrived 10 minutes later. "I understand. I am sorry. Take care of yourself, Claire." I almost laughed at the final sentence. Take care of yourself? Once, those words had been an accusation. Now, they sounded like surrender. Spring arrived, and my life continued expanding into spaces Ethan had never occupied. I accepted a promotion at work.
The role required more travel and more responsibility, but it also required me to stop pretending I was less capable than I was. During my final interview, the regional director asked why I believed I was ready. A year earlier, I would have softened my answer. This time, I said, because I have already been doing most of the job for 6 months, and the results prove I can handle the rest. I received the offer the following afternoon. Marcus convinced me to register for a 10-kilometer race in May. Training became more demanding, but I no longer treated discomfort as evidence that I did not belong. Some days were excellent, some were terrible. I learned that progress did not disappear just because one run went badly, or one old memory returned unexpectedly. That lesson reached beyond exercise. In April, I saw Ethan for the first time since the night at my door. I was leaving a restaurant with Maya when a group entered from the opposite side. Ethan was among them, wearing a dark suit and speaking to an older man. He noticed me immediately. For a second, both of us stopped.
He looked healthier, less controlled somehow. There was no dramatic reaction, no visible regret, no sudden attempt to approach. He simply smiled. Not the familiar smile he once used when he expected me to cross the room toward him. A smaller one, respectful, almost sad. I returned it. Then Maya and I walked outside. "That was him?" she asked. "Yes." "You're not going to look back?" "No." She looked back for me anyway. "He isn't either." "Good." And I meant it. That encounter showed me something I had not understood before. Healing was not winning. It was not making Ethan suffer longer than I had suffered. It was not becoming more beautiful so he would regret choosing Brooke. Healing was reaching the point where his opinion, positive or negative, no longer determined the atmosphere inside my own body. In May, I completed the 10-kilometer race in just over an hour. At the finish line, Marcus handed me water and said, "Half marathon next." I stared at him. "You have a serious inability to let people enjoy achievements." "Enjoy it for the rest of today," he said. "Tomorrow we plan." My brother and Maya joined us for lunch. Dr. Ortiz sent a congratulatory message. Even Dr. Chen, who usually kept strict professional boundaries, replied to the photograph with a single sentence: "You are taking up your full amount of space." That was the message I saved. Not the race time, not Ethan's apology, that sentence. Because it described what had truly changed.
By summer, the story no longer felt like the central event of my life. It had become something that happened to me, not the thing that defined me. That distinction took nearly a year. People often imagine transformation as a clean sequence: heartbreak, determination, improvement, victory. In reality, I still had mornings when I looked in the mirror and heard Ethan's voice describing everything that was supposedly wrong with me. I still had moments when photographs of Brooke appeared in old memories, and anger rose so suddenly that it surprised me. But the feelings no longer controlled what happened next. I could notice them and continue with my day. Dr. Chen called that progress. Marcus called it discipline. I called it freedom. In July, almost exactly 1 year after Ethan proposed to Brooke, I moved into a new apartment. It was brighter than the old one, with tall windows and a narrow balcony overlooking a park. For the first time, I chose every piece of furniture without imagining whether someone else would approve. I bought a mustard yellow armchair. Ethan would have hated it. That was not why I chose it, but I smiled every time I looked at it. Maya helped me unpack. While opening a box of books, she found the green knitted blanket that had been on Ethan's bed the night I discovered the affair. She held it up. "You kept this?" "I forgot it was in there." "What should we do with it?" For a moment, I saw that bedroom again. Brooke beneath the blanket, Ethan turning toward the door, the television continuing to play as though nothing important had happened. Then the image passed. "Donate it," I said. Maya placed it in a bag without ceremony. That was all. No burning ritual, no dramatic speech, no need to destroy something that no longer had power over me. A few weeks later, Margaret Caldwell sent me a handwritten letter. I recognized her formal handwriting before opening the envelope. She apologized for calling me to the wedding. She wrote that grief and embarrassment had made me treat me like a solution instead of a person. She admitted that she had watched Ethan underestimate me for years and had never challenged him because the relationship seemed convenient for everyone. Her final paragraph was the only part I read twice. "You were right. That day was not his opportunity to begin again. It was the consequence of how he had chosen to live. I am sorry I tried to make you carry that consequence for him." I did not respond, but I kept the letter. Not as proof that I had won, as proof that sometimes people eventually become honest, even when honesty arrives too late to repair anything. In August, I traveled to Washington for work. The conference hotel was only a few blocks from Ethan's new office. I knew because a mutual friend had mentioned the firm's name months earlier. For one evening, the possibility of seeing him existed everywhere. Every dark suit crossing a lobby, every familiar posture on the sidewalk, every silver vehicle passing the hotel entrance made my attention sharpen. Then I realized I was tired of giving the possibility so much space. I changed clothes and went running. The route followed the Potomac beneath a sky turning orange above the water. Tourists crowded the paths, cyclists rang bells as they passed. My breathing settled into the rhythm I had spent months building. At mile 3, I stopped thinking about Ethan. At mile 5, I stopped thinking about the fact that I had stopped thinking. I simply ran. That autumn, I completed my first half marathon.
The final kilometers hurt more than anything Marcus had prepared me for. My legs felt heavy, my feet blistered, and every part of me wanted permission to walk. Near the finish line, I heard my brother shouting. Maya was beside him, holding a sign that read, "Take up space." Marcus stood several feet away, pretending not to look emotional. I crossed the line in 2 hours and 16 minutes. For several seconds, I could not speak. I bent forward with my hands on my knees, while someone placed the medal over my head. Then I looked up and saw the photograph being taken. My face was exhausted. My hair was soaked with sweat. Nothing about me looked polished. I had never felt more beautiful. Later that night, I thought about the word Ethan had used to end us, match. He had spoken it like a final judgment, as though compatibility were permanent and people could be measured once, categorized and placed aside. But people are not fixed objects. The woman Ethan left was real. She was grieving, exhausted, frightened, and disappearing. She was also unfinished. He mistook one chapter for the whole story. And because he believed he already knew exactly who I was, he stopped paying attention to who I could become.
That was the consequence of being underestimated. Once Ethan decided I was predictable, he stopped accounting for me. He believed the version of me standing in his bedroom doorway was the final version. The woman holding a laptop bag, staring at the green blanket, too shocked to scream and too wounded to fight. He never imagined she would wake before sunrise the next morning. He never imagined she would return to the gym after crying in the bathroom. He never imagined she would learn to run, speak without apologizing, demand the promotion she deserved, and build a home that did not require anyone else's approval. He made his plans without considering what I might become. Then, on the worst day of his life, he stood at my front door expecting to find the woman he had left behind. Instead, he found someone he no longer knew how to speak to. For a long time, I believed his silence that night was the victory. The stunned look on his face, the unfinished sentences, the realization that Brooke had betrayed him and I had survived him. But that was not the real victory. The real victory came later, in ordinary moments nobody else witnessed. It was deleting the photographs I had once been afraid to lose. It was eating dinner alone without feeling abandoned. It was running beside the river while the sun disappeared behind the buildings. It was buying the yellow chair simply because I liked it. It was learning that forgiveness did not require access, and compassion did not require sacrifice. Most importantly, it was understanding that I had never needed to become more beautiful, thinner, quieter, or easier to love. I had needed to stop offering my life to people who only valued the parts of me that served them. A year after the canceled wedding, I returned to Hawthorne Ridge. Not for Ethan. My company hosted a charity dinner there, and declining the invitation simply because of the venue felt like giving the past more authority than it deserved. The country club looked exactly the same.
White stone walls, manicured lawns, the lake reflecting the evening sky. I walked through the lobby where the shattered vase had once covered the floor. There were no scattered flowers now, no overturned chairs, no whispering guests, only soft music and people carrying glasses of wine between tables. For a moment, I remembered Margaret gripping my hands and telling me I could still have everything I had wanted. She had been wrong. I could not have everything I had wanted because the woman who wanted those things no longer existed. She had wanted Ethan's approval. She had wanted to be chosen. She had believed being chosen by someone else would prove that she was enough. The woman standing in that lobby wanted something entirely different. She wanted peace. She wanted strength. She wanted a life large enough to contain every part of her.
My director introduced me to a group of executives near the terrace. I spoke about our new regional strategy and answered their questions without minimizing my role in it. Nobody interrupted me, and if they had, I would have continued speaking. Later, I stepped outside alone. The ceremony garden was visible beyond the terrace. Rows of empty chairs had been arranged for another wedding taking place the following afternoon. I thought about Ethan somewhere in Washington and Brooke somewhere in Miami. I hoped they had both become better people, but their lives no longer felt connected to mine. That was the final thing healing gave me. Not revenge, distance, the ability to remember without returning, the ability to stand in the same place where someone once tried to make me a replacement and feel no need to prove that I had become irreplaceable. I already knew my worth. I did not need Ethan to recognize it. I did not need Margaret to apologize for it. I did not need Brooke to envy it. I stayed on the terrace until the lights appeared across the lake. Then I went back inside, joined the people waiting for me, and continued with my evening. Ethan had once said we did not match. He was right. I no longer matched the smaller life I had accepted beside him. I had finally grown into one that belonged completely to me.